do right here is go back, way back into time.
For over 2 decades, Phil Collins has been one of Britain's only international superstars, selling over 200 million albums as a solo artist and as frontman of Genesis.
Globally, I had an amazing success rate in the 80s. I mean, you just couldn't get away from it.
He's an extraordinary combination of being sort of an ordinary guy, but having a big talent.
Every, 6 weeks, there'd be another #1 Phil Collins. And it comes to a point when you go, all right, Phil, just take a 2-month break so to give the rest of us a chance.
Take a look at me now. Well, there's just an empty space.
I literally didn't know when he slept because he just kept going because he loved it.
I can't dance, I can't sing. I'm just standing here selling everything.
Every time you go up in a lift, I can feel it come shut up. You know, the success of the music made it ubiquitous.
Think twice, 'cause it's another day for you. You and me in paradise.
Every record he released virtually went to #1 all around the world. All the fans lapped it up. And then the facts made a lot of people wonder if Phil Collins was such a nice guy after all.
That affected my life, and it still is affecting my life, really, because everybody always writes, Phil Collins, new record, Testify. Phil, who dumped his wife, by fact, all this stuff. And it's just become part of my, 4-page biography.
When public opinion has turned on you, the only way you can get it back is to do something that recaptures their imagination and their love for you.
'Cause I can't stop loving you. No, I can't.
Phil Collins moved to Switzerland in 1996. Now he's back with his first solo album in 6 years, Testify.
Why should I?
The fact that I haven't been around as much may give people an opportunity to look at it with fresh ears, listen to it with fresh ears. I please God, I hope so.
All of my life, I've been saying sorry for the things I know I should have done. All the things I could have said come back to me. Sometimes I wish that it had just begun.
For a while, I didn't want to do a new album, to be quite honest, because I knew that would lead to a tour. And I didn't really want to go on tour. I mean, I love touring, but, I'm 51 and I don't really fancy it.
I think he's not taking on as much as he used to. He's slowly kind of taking time off more to spend time with his family and to do the things he loves to do. He just seems the happiest I've ever seen him.
He's enjoying himself a lot more. When he lived in England, he never really, I wouldn't say had a life, but he went home every night. He never went out. He didn't have too many friends. He went out for the odd curry, but it was just mainly work and home every night. But since he's been in Switzerland, he likes his skiing. He's got his boat.
It is funny that, of all the places I've ended up, out of all the places I could have ended up, I've come here obviously because I'm at where I am, but it's a wonderful coincidence that life is based around the water here.
Phil Collins was born in Hounslow, West London in 1951 and spent much of his childhood on the River Thames.
My mum and dad loved boats, and every weekend we spent on the river. In a very modest way. I don't want to sound like it was gin and tonic, it wasn't like that, but it was a great way to grow up. And Thursday nights were spent at the yacht club, which was a very kind of Ponzi name really for a whole bunch of people that got together that owned little cabin cruisers.
They used to have concerts 2 or 3 times a year, and he used to drum for the pianist, even as young as he was.
From the age of 5, I just had no interest in anything else other than being a drummer.
He was never happy unless he was performing, you know, and good, bad or indifferent. It didn't matter as long as he was showing off or performing. I used to grumble at him because he would get his drum kit down where we were sitting and enjoying the evening and drum so loudly. It was a bit ghastly.
My father said, why can't he play the piano? If he played the piano, he could go and at least entertain at parties. Who wants to hear a drummer?
My father was one of the old guard, you know, 40 years in the insurance company, worked in the City of London. His father had worked in insurance. I think my dad always wanted me to go into the insurance business like he did and like he was made to do. For years, I thought my dad, he grew up to be an insurance man. But I found out through my brother, he said Dad never wanted to go into the insurance. He wanted to be a sailor, and he ran away to sea. How romantic. But his dad brought him back and made him go into the city. And maybe that was one of the reasons why he kind of felt oppressed all his life, because, you know, in the same way that Basil Fawlty is oppressed, you kind of feel like, why are you having fun and I'm not? In fact, there's a bit of cine footage of me and my dad looking at the river. And he turns around and walks towards the camera, walks up the steps and walks away, leaving me to sort of certain death, you know, on the edge of the river. And it was kind of, I kind of summed it up in a way.
Phil's mother worked as a booking agent at Acton's Barbara Speake Stage School. In 1964, she sent a number of young hopefuls to audition for the role of the Artful Dodger in Lionel Bart's production of Oliver. Phil got the part.
It was very much like him, really. He was sort of, you know, cat the lad. He was good.
In 1965, Phil joined the Barbara Speake Stage School full-time. Not content with acting, he developed a neat sideline modelling woolens for mail-order catalogues. But all he really wanted to do was rock.
He was so into music. That was his main hobby, if you like, as opposed to acting. And even then, everybody thought he was a fantastic drummer.
Phil was the driving force behind the school group The Real Thing. They enlisted 2 girls as backing singers, girls who would play a huge part in his life.
Because it was all Motown and Stax and stuff like that we were doing, we had background singers, and we had 2 girls singing. One I went on to marry, Andy, and the other one, who was also my big girlfriend at school, Lavinia, she was one of the other singers.
He sort of went out with both of them. See, there were very few boys in the school, and he really had his pick. And the girls really used to sort of line up for him.
There'd always be half a dozen girls, you know, chatting to him, and he was very, very popular.
When I was at school, there was only 2 guys, and Philip played the violin. That was not cool. I played the drums. That was cool.
The school's ladies' man, Phil was also very fashion-conscious.
I remember he had a green leather coat and a sort of mod haircut, modelled on his hero, Roger Powell, the drummer from the Actions.
Everything was from Carnaby Street, very expensive. It was all very trendy.
Still at stage school, Phil was juggling his time between his band and acting. He reached a crossroads in 1968 when his cool image was threatened by his first film role.
Dad, you said I could have a cow of my own. Can I have this one?
Hold on, I'm in one of our herd.
You said I could choose.
And I had to say all these lines, bear in mind that I kind of felt I was pretty hip, so I started to do things my own way.
Clashing with the film's director, Phil was dismayed to find his part had mysteriously shrunk.
I went on a mysterious biking holiday halfway through the film.
You had to go away on this camping trip?
Yeah, Dad said I got to. I promised you, Stephen, I can't get out of it. And you, keep out of trouble.
Have a good time.
Yeah, cheerio.
Okay, bye.
And only returned from this mysterious buying holiday at the end of the film.
And look who's here. Mike! Where've you been?
And I thought, well, not only am I saying crap, but I'm also being cut out of the film. If this is the way if this is the way this business is, I don't want any part of it. And I want to be a musician anyway.
Now doubly determined to become a professional musician, Phil started hanging out at the Marquee Club, home to the new sounds of swinging London. The Beatles may have been household names, but rock music still wasn't exactly a conventional career choice.
I got used to the idea pretty quickly, but my husband was a hard nut to crack because he thought it was just wasting his time. He said, I want him to have a proper job.
He kind of didn't want to, he sent me to Coventry for 2 or 3 weeks, because at work, when he went to work and people would say, how's Philip doing? He had to say, I was in a pop group, oh, how terrible for you. Raping and pillaging his way across the world,
Our dad always wanted us to have proper jobs. And that's what he was quite famous for saying, if only I could have one normal child. And what we're all really gutted about is that my dad died before Phil really got successful.
In the late 60s, with Phil on drums and his mate Ronnie Carroll on guitar, the Hounslow duo gigged their way through a number of bands before joining Flaming Youth. Arc 2, the band's only album, was the creation of Alan Blakely and Ken Howard, the producers and songwriters behind Dave Dee, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch.
The music was about the last spaceship to leave Earth as the planet is dying to find new life on another planet. And we all took turns to sing the songs. Some of the songs, not many of us liked, but Phil said, well, I'll do it. So we ended up singing quite a lot of them.
Flaming Youth's concept album was either ahead of its time or not very good. It was back to the drawing board for Phil.
I was getting very frustrated, buying Melody Maker, seeing all these bands working. Some bands like Quintessence, Genesis, always turned up on the back pages of gigs. We're playing here, playing there. And I said, well, we're not playing anywhere. So eventually I was starting to look at other places to get work.
While pouring through the job sections in the music press, Phil lit on an ad placed by the then manager of Genesis.
I rang up, and I guess it was Peter Gabriel I spoke to. And he said, yes, sir, come down to my parents' house in Chobham. And being there early and having 2 or 3 drummers ahead of me, I didn't know what the conversation was happening, what they were saying to each other, but I could hear the music. The same piece of music being played 2 or 3 times, and then the same piece of music being played with the next guy 2 or 3 times. So by the time I came up to play, I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing.
Just the way he sat down on a stool, I knew that he was going to be good, because some people just have a sort of confidence about what they do.
In 1970, the 19-year-old Phil Collins joined Genesis. Formed in the mid-60s, these former Charterhouse public school boys had already released 2 albums. Now, with their new drummer in place, they set about writing their third. But things weren't all peace and love.
In the middle of, I thought, just, conversation, suddenly someone would get up and slam the guitar on the floor and walk out. And I said, what? And someone had said something to upset somebody else. And then 2 hours later, this person would come back and we'd start playing again. And suddenly they'd be, oh, fuck you, and somebody else would walk out. It was very highly strung.
I would often be at loggerheads with Tony Banks, and Phil would always sit on the fence. He'd never want to come into the arguments, really.
I saw it as my job to deflate a lot of these situations with humour, which, that kind of stage school background enabled me to do.
Apart from the humour, it's got a laid-back approach. Very serious about his work, but a very laid-back approach to life, which I think helped us a little bit.
In '71, Genesis released one of the key prog rock albums, Nursery Crime.
It was music based on goblins and time travel, was God an astronaut, things like this.
Initially, Genesis' blend of fantastical lyrics and difficult time signatures didn't catch on.
it was a sort of reasonably complex music, so it was quite difficult to find the people that would like us, in a way. A lot of people come to want to hear rock and roll. We weren't right, we weren't blues, we weren't all these kind of things.
But by 1972, Genesis were becoming more than a cult band. Their fourth album, Foxtrot, converted the music press, and fans loved the outfits.
Around the album Foxtrot, we had a character on the sleeve which was in a red dress and fox's head. So I borrowed a red dress off my wife, and we got a fox's head sort of made up that I could wear, and arrived in Dublin with it.
He came out with the fox's head and the woman's dress, you know, and it was, what is he? What the? And of course, I've since read actually in one of the fanzines that he deliberately didn't tell anybody what he was going to do.
I may have just skirted around the issue with the band, but it wasn't something I was sort of really going to discuss thoroughly, because I thought that would be yet another argument.
We weren't too sure about it because it appeared to distract from the music.
But nevertheless, it made the front pages of Melody Maker, and it put a note on the end of our earnings every gig.
As their audience grew, Genesis claimed their first chart hit in 1974. After the success of the Fox's Head and the Red Dress, things got really out of hand.
Genesis Live was extraordinary because it was visually stunning and musically very powerful.
It was a hell of an introduction to live music, and of course Phil Collins was always larger than life on stage as well. You know, he wasn't like the guy that just hid behind the wall of cymbals.
He really did drive them musically along. I think Tony Banks was quoted as saying that when Phil joined the band, he was the best musician in them.
Phil worked relentlessly at perfecting his skills.
I think on the road, he was perfectionist level 3. He listened to the tapes after the show. He'd never sort of let go.
There was a tape recorder at the mixing desk, and that's the first thing he wanted after the show, was to get hold of the tape and listen to it. And he would have comments about what he thought could be better, and he would write little notes and put them under people's doors.
By 1975, Genesis were a well-established rock band playing to thousands of fans all over Europe. Their albums, Selling England by the Pound and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, were top 10 hits. But the press fascination with the stage show was beginning to gripe.
The band detested the fact that the theatrical bits were getting more attention than the music.
It did start to rub me up the wrong way because the press would start to review what he wore and the show aspect of it, and the music started to slowly take a back seat.
The most ambitious tour we did was the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway show, and I always had this one costume, the Slipper Man costume, which Pete couldn't actually get a microphone anywhere near his mouth, so it was kind of a bit strange, so you couldn't sing it, really, or not properly anyhow. And so I think we felt at that point, you know, it went too far. We felt that the visuals had kind of slightly taken over from the music a bit on that.
Perhaps inevitably, Peter Gabriel left the band after the Lamb album tour.
It was a shock. It was disappointing, I thought, because they worked so hard to reach that peak together, that point where they were on the verge of conquering America, and you know, they were headlining a major rock band, whereas only 5 years earlier they'd been playing to 5 people upstairs at Ronnie Scott's club.
Genesis held extensive auditions to replace Gabriel and drew a blank. Once recording had begun on their next album, the band realized the answer lay within.
We knew he had a good voice because he used to do a lot of doubling with Pete, which was always one of the reasons we gave that when Pete left and Phil carried on singing without him, that it didn't sound so much different as you might have thought it would.
They prodded his friend and questioned his story again.
We did our first gig in London, Ontario. And I remember on the way to the gig, I was terrified. I mean, not of the singing, but of just of what the audience, how the audience would react to me, because they love Peter.
I think Phil was probably more worried about the talking bit than the singing bit. Because the singing bit we'd rehearsed for a while, you know, and the set had been going well in rehearsals. And Peter was such a great talker between songs to communicate and get something going with the audience. I remember seeing Phil after the first song, and he had a little bit of paper with his was going to say or outline on a bit of paper, and I saw this hand, right? Like, the white paper was shaking like this, you know, for the first introduction. And then by the time the second one came, or the third one came, it kind of, his hand steadied. So I thought, we're going to be okay then.
And I think it was because I'd come from within the group, so they knew me, and also they wanted it to work. They didn't want their group to split up.
It was Phil's Pythonesque sense of humour which also endeared him to the Genesis fans. When punk arrived in 1977, prog rock was pronounced officially dead.
It was like someone coming to a factory and saying, we're closing down, sorry lads, get your cards, you're on the dole. So your money would not have been on Genesis. One of the worst examples of prog rock excess with the public schoolboys singing about fountains. And incredibly though, they just shrugged it off. Punk rock, yeah, you go on singing songs about the Queen and vomiting and we'll just get richer and richer.
With Phil increasingly becoming a dominant force in the band, Genesis not only survived punk, but had their first top 10 hit. No goblins were mentioned.
Phil helped the band kind of move on to a different level.
Sort of like expanded our audience to a slightly different area of people, most noticeably women, I think, actually.
They had always been an album band, a band that had a male fan base, and now it was becoming much more mainstream.
In 1980, the band struck it big in the US when their song Turn It On Again was a hit on American radio. Genesis were now an arena band. In between touring and recording with Genesis, Phil was involved with many other projects.
His main pleasure was music, and to play it, really. He didn't kind of relax doing that many other things. As soon as we stopped doing something, he'd be off doing a session somewhere.
Phil did sessions for artists like Rod Argent, Brian Eno, and his old stablemate Peter Gabriel, alongside drumming and singing with jazz rock band Brand X.
This was heaven for me. I was playing, music with a groove, where Genesis wasn't really a groove band at that point. And we had gunfights and stuff on stage with very Monty Python, tapes of sheep bleating and stuff. And we went on tour to America. We did 12 shows in one of the Genesis breaks. And that was it then. Life for Genesis was getting too hectic.
I have dragged Mr. Phil Collins off his drum kit because I think it would be nice to know what's happening with your other little band.
Other lot, yes.
Genesis.
We're rehearsing at the moment, as I speak. In fact, not as I speak.
Well, hardly.
Yesterday and tomorrow. Yeah, we were rehearsing for another 3 or 4 or 5 weeks for an album, which we would be doing, and followed closely by a tour.
Devoting more time to Genesis didn't help create quality time for Phil's family life. In 1980, he'd been married for 5 years to Andrea Bertarelli, one of the 2 backing singers in his school band, The Real Thing. They had 2 children, Jolie, Andrea's child who Phil had adopted, and their own son, Simon.
It was not a happy marriage. My life was being a musician, and that takes you away from home. And if you're with someone that doesn't like to be alone, it's not the person to be with,
I don't think my mom or my dad really anticipated the amount of success that was to come and how crazy it was actually going to get, to the point where he wouldn't come back for 2 years.
You do see the strain that it makes on one of your parents when they're trying to take care of 2 kids, 2 dogs, a house. I know it was hard on my mom, definitely.
She just wasn't getting what she needed. And what she needed was, someone to be there, to support her, to help her bring up a family.
Separated from Phil, Andrea moved to live near her mother in Vancouver, Canada.
When Andy upped and left England to go to Canada with the kids, I left the band. We had a meeting, and I said, listen, I'm going to go and live in Vancouver. And if this band can exist with me living in Vancouver, then I'm in the band. But if you can't exist with me in that situation, then I am out of the band. And they said, whoa, 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 whoa. Just go to Canada, work it out. If you can work it out, great. And if not, we'll be here.
Things didn't work out, and Phil returned home alone.
That's when he started writing on his own, and he was able to express feelings through lyrics and stuff, which I think helped him quite a bit.
You know, instead of going out and getting drunk, I would actually sit down and write something. Then I'd get drunk.
Phil's Misery produced his first solo album, Face Value. The album secured him a deal with Virgin Records and a hugely successful first single.
When the album was first delivered, In the Air Tonight just stood out as the outstanding track.
One of the best pop songs I think ever written.
Cut down, spare, minimal. It sounded utterly new.
I remember DJs on the radio, on Radio 1, who was the stalwart of Radio 1 at the time, playing it all the time.
He was on in every jukebox in every pub. I can hear it sounding in the air tonight, hold on. And you know, boom, 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 boom. We all go, yeah, you know. Fucking magic, man.
In the Air Tonight is just one of the all-time greats.
I think he really sort of, you know, tapped in to that woman that had that big romance, that had trusted her man, that had been cheated on and left and thrown into the gutter. And you think, oh, he's so sensitive.
He stripped himself emotionally and stuck himself out there, sang from the heart about his marriage problems and God knows what else. And I think people related to that.
He turned his pain into his music. And my mum didn't necessarily have that outlet, you know. And I think it was also hard for my mum because you hear songs about yourself that everybody knows your life.
There's an apocryphal story that he performed on Top of the Pops with a paint pot as a veil to the fact that his wife had gone off with a painter and decorator. We've always, the joke at the end of it at the time was, thank God she didn't run off with a fishmonger.
I hadn't thought about that at all. This was just a purely practical thing. Workmate is the right height. T-chest is in, you know, kind of workmate T-chest, that works. And I found a pot of paint with it, you know, I put it on top of the drum machine. It just, the picture was complete. And I really did not get any link between the fact that Andy had gone off with a decorator.
Face Value was #1 in the album charts, but In the Air Tonight was kept off the top of the singles chart by John Lennon's Woman. A year later, Phil had his first #1 when he released a cover of the Supremes' hit, You Can't Hurry Love.
My mama said you can't hurry love. No, you just have to wait. She said love don't come easy, but it's a game of give and take.
Whilst on a solo tour of the US, Phil met and fell in love with American Jill Tavelman. The touring didn't stop, so Jill had to go on the road. They married in 1984, the same year that Phil had his first US #1, with a track written for the Taylor Hackford film, Against All Odds.
It all just started to sort of get bigger, like, you know, the kind of the soap suds, you know, and just sort of more and more and more and more.
It was a right time, right place sort of record that just connected with everyone, you know, and it was at that point that it really felt that Phil could do no wrong.
No Jacket Required made Phil Collins an international superstar. He entertained millions of people in stadiums all over the world, became a fixture on TV chat shows everywhere, and was even the darling of the British tabloids.
For the next 5-6 years, Phil Collins was in clover, really. I don't think he could do anything wrong. But I don't think anybody expected this sort of balding short man to be such a star, really.
This was the 80s, when glamour was supposed to be everything.
Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet and Adamant brought with them this glamour, this makeup, this radical, sexy look. And they were all really good-looking guys. And in the midst of it all, you had this balding little man wearing dungarees.
I've got an image, but it's the image is of that of a non-image, you know what I mean? It's not a the Simon Le Bon, David Bowie, Sting image.
Phil's a totally unlikely ladies' man. I mean, he doesn't have matinee idol looks. But the thing was that he was always such an attractive personality.
I am a romantic, and I think that comes through in the music. I would imagine that women like to think that a guy is more sensitive than some other guys. You know, they write music that's kind of seen from, oh, I wish my husband was like that, wrote something like that about me, or, you know, that kind of thing.
Not only did the ladies love him, Phil also remained a regular geezer.
He never tries to be anything else than what he is. And what he is he's a nice bloke. I'll never forget, I went to a concert and they had all this amazing food laid out. You know. And everybody's sort of, you know, drinking champagne and eating this food. And he's over in the corner with a light owl and a bag of fish and chips. So what is he? I can't stand that stuff.
By the mid-1980s, Phil Collins was working with everybody. He produced albums for the likes of Eric Clapton, Adam Ant, ABBA's Frida, and Earth, Wind and Fire's Philip Bailey, whose duet with Phil was a huge hit on both sides of the Atlantic.
He was a workaholic. He wasn't going to go and take a year off and sit in his ass doing nothing, you know. I remember seeing him a couple of times, and I said, he looked knackered, Phil, and he says, I'm absolutely fucked, you know. I just need a rest, and he didn't seem to want to give it to himself. He just kept going, work, work, work.
He had so many hits that people were saying, oh, for Christ's sake, Phil Collins, you know. And the non-stop work ethic, you know, he seemed to be everywhere all the time.
In a very short time, my duty is to take one of the finest ambassadors of the British music industry from Wembley to Philadelphia. He's gonna get himself into the record books by choppering out of here, going to Wembley, getting on Concorde, and you will see him again later in this incredible concert from Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Collins!
Good afternoon, Wembley. Good afternoon, Philadelphia, and the world. How can I just let you walk away? Just let you leave without a trace? When I stand here taking every breath with you.
And it was blisteringly hot. The white stage, it was so hot.
You're the only one who really knew.
And I made a terrible mistake on Against All Odds on the piano. And I thought, oh God, what a good start to the day this is.
Walk away from me when all I can do is watch you leave.
I mean, people remember a lot of things about that day, but a lot of them remember, like, Phil playing both places and being on Concorde.
Listen, whose idea was this whole trip, this Philadelphia idea? No idea. No, it was, we thought if it could be done, wouldn't it be good to do it? And then we went into the logistics, and we found out that it was possible. And then we had to, I mean, I didn't want to go just to America to play my own song, so I arranged Eric Clapton's on tour out there, and so is Robert Plant, so I rang them up and see if I could play with them, so give me something to go for. And it's just nice to be involved in as much as possible, really. You know, I'm a lunatic.
Not only did Phil perform solo in London and Philadelphia, he performed in the UK with Sting and in the US with Eric Clapton and Led Zeppelin.
By Phil saying he'd play with these bands, it gave an immense credibility to the entire project, because a lot of these bands reformed, and they were very nervous. And when you said Phil's going to drum with so-and-so, they were, well, that's cool. That just makes it easier, you know, and it gives, again, the tick of approval. Say, OK, this is serious.
Turn around and see me cry. There's so much I need to say to you. So many reasons why. You're the only one who really knew me.
It was an inhuman act of endurance, but it was kind of great. I can play with him, and I can do this and I can do that. I'm happy.
1 year after Live Aid, Phil was back wowing stadiums with Genesis. Despite his hectic solo career, Phil wasn't about to give up his day job. Genesis may have formed back in the 60s, but their video for Land of Confusion showed they knew all about the 80s. Meanwhile, Phil's solo success made him a natural for that ultimate 80s TV series, Miami Vice.
Miami Vice rang up and said, "We use your music a lot. How about acting in one of the episodes?" And I said, "I don't do that anymore." So they said, "Well, come on, it'd be fun, it'd be fun." I said, "All right, well, send me a script, you know, I'll see it, and if it's fun, I'll do it." You know, I got the script and I was in every page. It was a story based around me. And I called them and said, "I don't know if I can do this, you know, I'm not very good at this anymore, and I didn't like it when I did it." So they said, "Oh, come over to Florida, we'll have a great time. It's only a week of your life." You know? And I went over there and I had a fantastic time. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And at the end of it, people say, "You know, you should do more of this." And that led to Buster.
Julie Waters was the first one cast, and she said yes, subject to who was going to be playing her co-lead. And the obvious choice was Bob Hoskins, but he wasn't available. So we started looking elsewhere, and my wife, Jane, was watching television one day, and she called me and she said, "Look, come here, there's Buster Edwards, he's on television."
Well, what were you going to do with the money when you got it? Hey, dealing with money's never been one of my problems.
I thought it was a great idea, partly because I was a fan, and I knew that he'd been an actor. So it wasn't just like casting someone who was a rock star and who'd never done anything before. And he just, there's something about the way he looks and things that just felt right for that character.
Listen to me, you old bag. I've been shut up with you for 24 hours a day, 7 days a bleeding week near enough. God, most men would have throttled their old ladies by now. You want to know why I haven't? Because you are the best bloody thing that's ever happened to me.
I thought Phil was really good, because one or two other people in the rock business had done films around that time. Not very good. And he was fantastic. I thought this is it was like working with a proper actor.
Just goes to show you get what you pay for, in the end.
You all right for money?
Yeah, well, that's why I came over here, isn't it? The Swiss account is now operating properly.
One of the biggest problems for an actor is vanity. And if you're aware of people looking at you, then you take away the peeping Tom aspect of the audience. And Phil always comes on as himself, which is the best start you can have. You know, if you can actually be, you know, in front of a camera, forget the camera and just be yourself and just do the job, then, you know, people actually feel that they're watching something that they shouldn't be watching.
I think the only time I was kind of slightly disappointed with what he wouldn't deliver was when he refused to take any of his clothes off.
I said from the beginning, because I remember reading the script, it says, "Buster gets out of bed, obviously naked." I said, "What does that mean? Obviously naked?" And David said, "Well, you know, we're going to see your bum." I said, "Yeah, why? No, I don't know about that. Because if you see my bum, you know." I said, I'd rather really wear something. So I don't mind how brief it is, but I really would rather wear something. He said, "OK, well, don't worry about it." So I said, "You're sure now?" So we went through the whole film, you know, till we did the scene where, you know, the police lights come through the curtain and I get out of bed. And Julie looks at me and laughs. And I said, at the beginning of that day, I said, "We got what I'm going to wear?" They said, "We thought we'd just do it." I said, No. I said, I bought actually a couple of pairs of swimming trunks, you know, and one of them was blue. And they said, "We can't possibly use blue, it flares, darling." So I said, "Well, you've got to think of something, OK?" So anyway, they eventually came up with some tea-stained tights, which were cut off, you know, which were very comical to look at, you know, if you're trying to sort of, you know, have a romantic moment. So when I say, I didn't think they recognised me like this, I'm looking down at my tea-stained tights, and she's looking at them too, you know, and we both laugh, but obviously they think for the wrong reason, you know. But we know that it's because I have these little lines going all the way up my crutch.
You're going to put your trousers on?
Well, I thought they might not recognise me like this.
As well as starring in the film, Phil performed most of the soundtrack. Buster's theme tune won a string of awards and gave him his 8th top 10 hit.
When you're close to me, I can feel
By the late 80s, Phil Collins was an established superstar. Among his most famous fans were the Prince and Princess of Wales. Phil even became a trustee of Charles's Prince's Trust.
It's the 5th year Phil Collins has taken part in the Trust Music Workshop. It aims to transport young people away from the miseries of unemployment and encourage them to try out new skills, like preparing to give their own concert.
Phil worked very hard for the Trust, and he always made himself available, and he was interested too in what the Trust was doing. And whenever a new opportunity arose, he would be there.
Phil's well-publicised charitable acts and his fame as a multi-millionaire pop star came to the attention of the neighbours.
There was a guy who came to my door once and said, "Phil, you don't know me. I live in the village. They're going to turn me out of my house. I've got 3 kids, and I don't know what to do. I need some money, and I don't know what to do other than ask you." And I said, "How much do you need?" You know, he said, "Well, I need, you know, I guess £8,000 would do it." And I didn't really know how to say no to him, so I gave him a cheque. He said, "I'll pay you back." I said, "Listen, if you find yourself in a position where you can pay me back, then pay me back, but I'm not going to expect it." He said, "I will pay you back." I said, "I don't want any interest." So 2 years later, I get a knock on the door. "There's your money back." And I thought, you know, thank you. This is nice. This is the way it's supposed to be, you know? So, you know, I've also had some friends that have done it and not paid me back and actually said, "Well, what does he need it for? He's got loads of money," you know, which is not the point. It's not the point.
In 1989, Phil and Jill had a baby daughter, Lily. That same year, he released But Seriously, one of the fastest-selling albums in UK chart history. As the title suggests, he was now ready to take on the world.
Another Day in Paradise, I think, didn't win him any new fans. He was a multi-millionaire saying, "Hey, you people, why don't you do something about these poor people?" And of course, the correct response was, "Would you start, Phil?"
I did have that criticism levelled against me. But there are people that really live a cosseted life and don't live in the real world necessarily. I just don't think I'm like that, is all I can say.
The video for Another Day in Paradise was adopted by many homeless charities around the world as a promotional tool. This relationship spilled over into Phil's live gigs, at which he would collect money.
Phil normally says, well, you know, you see the people with the buckets, whatever you put in tonight, I'll double it. He wasn't too popular with the merchandising company that paid a lot of money up front to, you know, sponsor his tour. When he says, "Look, you know, I've got enough fucking money. Don't buy my T-shirts. Put the money in the bucket."
Phil entered the 90s as a megastar, still fronting Genesis as they toured the globe and scored hit after hit. His next solo album marked another change in musical style. At home, Phil recorded every instrument and all the vocals himself.
There's a lot more to making music than you think. Finding the words, writing the songs, making it sound good. Thought I'd do the whole thing myself on this album. The writing, the playing, the singing, the producing, you name it, it's down to me. In fact, it's the first time I've done everything myself, and I'm well pleased with the result. Being a reasonable bloke, I've called it Both Sides.
When I did Both Sides, I naively thought, I suppose, but I thought, But Seriously was a huge album, and now I've done this album which is really, I think, beautiful songs. And people are going to see this. They're going to see that there's a lot of soul in this record. I could have done another album like that and mopped up. It could have had loads of much better players playing on it, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make an album of beautiful songs, just by me.
I actually found them less than compelling records. You know, it's sort of like, well, heard you do that before, Phil. You know, got that song on another record, got that one on. You know, I didn't feel that he was breaking any new ground.
It was viewed as a disappointment. And I thought, well, that's a shame. I started to sense that I might not fit in anymore at that point.
You got a hammering because, like, everyone's going, oh, Christ, not... You know, every time you went to buy a pork chop, there was Phil Collins on the, you know, on the PA. Every time you go up in the lift, I can feel it, come shut up.
When you've been that popular and the man of the moment, as some artists are for an album or a year, and he was for 10, 12 years, it has to turn a little bit. You know what I mean? It can't last. And the trouble is, it would be Phil too, because if it was him, he wouldn't give a damn. He doesn't read the papers, doesn't read bad reviews. But Phil reads the papers, he reads reviews, he worries about things. It hurts him here, sort of thing.
He can get 1,000 great reviews and he can get one bad review, and it really, really affects him. I think it's because he really wears his heart on his sleeve. And when that gets shunned, it really takes it hard and personally.
I wrote to one journalist in San Francisco who referred to me as the McDonald's of pop music, and he kind of, it was a very bitchy review, and I actually wrote a very nasty thing to him the next day. A nasty letter. I shouldn't have written it. But, you know, I tended to do that. I don't do it anymore now. It's pathetic, isn't it?
In 1994, whilst touring the Both Sides album, the tabloids had a field day as they revealed Phil's relationship with a mystery Swiss lady. This triggered off a tabloid nightmare for Phil, his then-wife Jill, and his new love, Oriane.
I was playing here, and Oriane was asked by a friend of hers, who was the promoter, to meet us and make sure that we got from A to B, from B to C, and back to A again. And I must admit that in the car between the airport and the hotel, by the time I got out of the hotel, I was in love, you know. And anyway, you know, I mean, I was married, but the marriage was in trouble. I have to say, the marriage was in trouble before this.
Your heart's in pieces. You look for the truth.
Contrary to popular belief that Oriane was the reason for me and Jill splitting up, it wasn't. It was just events surrounding that time, you know, prior to, you know, around the time that I kind of met up with one of my school romances.
A few years before meeting Oriane, Phil was involved with Lavinia, the other backing singer in his school band, The Real Thing.
This was a school romance that hadn't been laid to rest. And, well, unfortunately, it took the foundation, it rocked the foundation of my marriage.
Tabloid interest in Phil's marital relations were further fueled when a fax he'd sent to his wife ended up on the front page of The Sun, to Phil's surprise.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I will never really get to the bottom of it. I tried my best. I went through phone bills. I got copies of phone bills to see if the line had been tapped, or was so-and-so responsible, was so-and-so responsible, and I really don't know.
What was for them a scoop then becomes, it was like opening the gates of hell for the Collinses, because then everybody else in Fleet Street wanted their slice as well.
I've actually been propositioned by one female journalist for if I could do this and do that. They just were looking for any angle.
It was, I mean, lots of lies and stuff, and I think it was kind of very painful, and especially at that time because my dad was dying, actually. Sometimes people, because they don't know, they just invent stuff, and it could really harm a lot of people around you. And to be honest, the only thing I was wanting was, because I find someone that I fall in love with, and the only thing I wanted is to be with him. So whatever people think about it, honestly, is not really, wasn't my problem. But it's just a bit strange sometimes when people jump to conclusion and without knowing the truth.
I felt a new low in my life. But how can this have happened, and how can they be so getting it wrong? So getting it wrong to such enormous proportions and with such huge repercussions.
Whether those headlines were true or not, it had a very damning effect on the way people viewed him. And I don't know if that's been reflected in his record sales, but I do know various people who said, oh, Phil Collins, can't stand him. Phil Collins, can't, you know, don't want to listen to him anymore. I mean, seriously, don't want to know.
Inspired by his tabloid nightmare, Phil's next album, Dance Into the Light, celebrated his new love and meditated upon the price of fame.
Well, later that day, this guy came to me with a scrap of paper in his hand. He said, hey, buddy, can you sign your name for me? I said, why? Do I owe you money? He said, no. I said, listen, pal, do I know you? Have we ever met? Why do you want my name on this little piece of paper? He said, I love you.
There was another level of what the song was about, which was, if you think this is so easy, you do it. You know, which is, again, around the time of the tabloid thing. You know, I don't want to be me. Actually, I don't really want to be me. You do this. You wear my, yeah, add me fucking shoes. I don't care. I don't want this anymore.
You can wear my shoes, you can take my socks. Come on, take my bag, it's yours.
I hated the situation I'd got myself into and was being put into constantly by the press. So I just wanted to be somebody else. You know? What I was not worth all that.
In 1996, Phil Collins left the UK and his band Genesis to set up home in Switzerland with Oriane. Even his solo career went on hold. When he eventually got behind the drums again, it was to fulfill his childhood dream of playing in a big band.
The idea was to do something that nobody else could do, you know, or had done, which was my songs, my stuff, but choose some songs which actually would be good for rearrangement by a big band.
He asked me to conduct his band that year, and with Tony Bennett too, and it was fun because we played not only Montreux, we played down the south of France, and we played Albert's Hall for Mandela and the royal family.
I saw suddenly not the Phil Collins we all knew, not the sound we all knew, but here's an American big band type sound. And I think maybe some people would even have been disappointed because they were thinking, okay, so it's Phil Collins, the big band, but it just means there's more musicians doing the same music. It wasn't.
My idea of doing this was not to sing. And I used to go on stage at the beginning of the show and say, thank you for coming. I just want to make it clear that I'm not going to be singing on this show.
And they thought he was kidding. They didn't think he was going to sit there with a big jazz band and play jazz songs all night long, but that's what he did.
Staying behind the drum kit and shunning the spotlight, Phil Collins toured Europe and America with his big band. Both territories remained oblivious to the No More Mr. Nice Guy stories back in Britain. Phil's music remains broadly admired in America, where the hottest urban artists collaborated on an album of Collins covers.
People back at home should know that, you know, he's respected here in a big way because he's truly a soul artist.
She calls out to the man on the street. Sir, can you help me?
From Lil' Kim to P. Diddy to any black artist, they always give big kudos to those that can really deliver. And there's no question that Phil Collins is one of those people. And look, when you can sing, you can sing.
Doesn't look right. He pretends he can't hear her.
In 2000, Phil won an Oscar for his soundtrack for Disney's Tarzan.
And the Oscar goes to...
There's that moment when she opened the envelope and said, and the Oscar goes to...
Phil Collins for You'll Be in My Heart.
I thought, my God, I can't believe this is happening.
The British film industry is celebrating after a night of success at this year's Oscars. Sam Mendes was named Best Director for his debut movie, American Beauty, which also won the award for Best Film. Michael Caine won Best Supporting Actor for his role in Cider House Rules, and the Mike Leigh film Topsy Turvy was also honoured.
I was actually surprised because in England it was kind of overlooked. You know, I mean, Michael Caine I think he got quite a lot of press, but, you know, we English people don't normally get, you know, it's a big deal for an English person to get an Oscar.
He was a man who was a major star, an icon in the 80s, you know, neck and neck with the Elton Johns and the Paul McCartneys. and they are now megastars and much loved by the British public. He's criticised by the press here, he's constantly bitched about on the radio, the young DJs that really don't like him.
I'm philosophically kind of adjusted to the fact that, you know, my big moment, it was fantastic, you know, but it's gone, you know, it's past. We've moved on to sort of a plateau now.
This month, Phil Collins releases a cover of Leo Sayers' 1978 hit, Can't Stop Loving You, taken from Testify, his first solo album in 6 years. Recorded at home, the album includes a song inspired by his baby son, Nicholas.
I would take him out first thing in the morning for a walk, and I used to just sing to him. And I started to sing words, you know, somehow you reach in and you touch my heart, somehow you reach in, you touch my soul. And I just kept singing it and singing it and singing it until I came back from the walk. And as soon as I was able to, came down here and did a demo of it.
Somehow you reach in and you touch my heart. Somehow you reach in, you touch my soul.
Apart from a song of affection for my son, it's kind of, it's one of my philosophical songs, you know, like one day you'll find a love like mine, you know, and when you look at her, you'll know, you know, there won't be any doubt, you'll know. It's just a little guideline for life.
Phil's advice to his new son draws on his own attempts to understand his father better.
I mean, even now, at 51, I'm learning about my family. I mean, I don't have as many memories as I would like to have had of my dad. I mean, my mum would be working or doing something, and he'd come home, and he'd be sitting there watching television, and I could have been with him, finding out things. What was that like, you know? How did we get here? Stories which I'm now finding out from my mother and from my brother and my sister. But I didn't do it. I was just like, music, music, music. So I used to go upstairs and play my records or play the drums. And of course, then one Christmas, he dies, you know, and then it's too late. And I know that I was just too selfish, I suppose, or too consumed by my desire to do what I was doing, which was play music. But now I know that we should pay attention because certain people won't be there forever.
He's a different person than I remember him being in the 80s. He's much more open now, open-minded. He's softer, he's more gentle in the way that he talks. He's more tolerant. He's happier, and I know that I owe a lot of that to his marriage with Orianne.
I think he's not taking on as much as he used to. I mean, because he also used to produce a lot of people's records and get involved in a lot of other projects and drumming and sessions, all that kind of stuff, you know. And I think he's slowly kind of taking time off more to spend time with his family and to do the things he loves to do, you know, spend more recreational time.
I've never been able to enjoy not doing things. And, you know, taking holidays or more breaks or, you know, we go away for weekends. And I never did that before. I mean, for no one's fault but mine, you know, I just never thought of it. I very rarely would sit down by the pool and read a book, you know, or go out on the boat and turn the engine off and maybe have a glass of wine or a glass of beer and read a book. And it's things like that that I've learnt, you know, and I guess that comes at a certain point in your life when you realise that there is actually more to life than just work, work, work. And maybe I should have learnt that a long time ago.
There's too much